MIA had always prided herself on being professional, but from the moment she stepped into Adrian Blackwood's office, she knew she was in trouble. He was the kind of man who demanded control, towering, confident, with eyes that held an intensity capable of making anyone falter. But MIA was determined not to be another one of his employees who melted under his gaze. "Miss Carter, you're late," he murmured, his voice smooth like aged whiskey. She swallowed hard, gripping her file. "Traffic, sir." His smirk was slow, knowing. "I don't tolerate excuses. But I do appreciate discipline." A shiver ran down her spine at the weight of his words. He wasn't just talking about work. Late nights at the office. The office was empty except for them. The city lights shimmered through the glass windows, casting long shadows. MIA was lost in paperwork when she felt him behind her, his presence alone making her pulse race. "You're still here," he observed, his voice close to her ear. She turned slightly, and their gazes locked. His sleeves were rolled up, his tie loosened, making him look both dangerous and devastatingly handsome. "I had work to finish," she replied. His fingers brushed against hers as he reached for the papers, the touch sending electricity up her arm. Such dedication. Her breath hitched. The air between them thickened with an unspoken promise. One that neither of them was ready to voice yet. Breaking the rules. The storm raged outside as MIA stood by the massive glass window of his penthouse, the city glowing below. Adrian walked up behind her, his presence like a fire licking at her skin. "You should go home," he said, but his fingers traced down her arm, contradicting his words. She turned to face him, breathless. "Maybe I don't want to." His control snapped. He grabbed her waist, pulling her flush against him. His lips crashed onto hers, demanding, consuming. She gasped into his mouth, her hands tangling in his hair. He lifted her effortlessly, carrying her to the couch, his weight pressing her down as he deepened the kiss. "MIA," he growled against her throat, his voice raw with need. She arched into him, letting herself drown in the fire he ignited within her. The morning after. Sunlight streamed through the curtains, painting golden patterns over the silk sheets. MIA blinked, finding herself wrapped in his arms, her body tangled with his. "You're awake," Adrian murmured, voice husky. She turned to face him, her fingers trailing over his bare chest. "This was a mistake," she whispered, though her body betrayed her words by pressing closer. He smirked, rolling on top of her, trapping her beneath him. "Then why do you look like you want to make the same mistake again?" She bit her lip, but the way his hands roamed her body told her they both knew the answer. The consequences. The office felt colder the next day. MIA sat stiffly in the conference room, her heart racing as Adrian entered. He barely looked at her as he took his seat at the head of the table. "Miss Carter," he said in his usual clipped tone. "I expect full dedication from my employees." His eyes flickered to hers, dark and unreadable. It was as if last night had never happened. Her stomach twisted. Had she made a mistake? Had she been just another conquest to him? But when the meeting ended and everyone left, he finally turned to her, his voice lower, rougher. "My office. Now." She hesitated, but the promise in his gaze sent a familiar heat spiraling through her. This wasn't over. Final choice. The rain poured as MIA stood outside his building, her emotions a mess. Adrian found her there, stepping into the downpour without hesitation. "Leaving?" he asked, his voice softer than she'd ever heard it. "Tears mixed with the rain. I can't be just another one of your flings." He stepped closer, cupping her face, his thumb brushing against her trembling lips. You're not. You never were. And then he kissed her, deep, desperate, and full of everything he hadn't said before. The city blurred around them, the storm raging on, but all she could feel was him. She was his. And he was never letting her go.